Hello everyone, welcome to Coding Digest. In this session, we are going to discuss about exception handling, right? Exception handling. Okay, so what is an exception? An exception is an event that disrupts the normal flow of the program's instruction during execution, right? So exception can occur for various reasons such as incorrect inputs, unavailable resources, or programming errors. Java provides a robust mechanism for handling exception to gracefully manage unexpected situations like that may arise during program execution. Correct? So Java has some inbuilt operations or inbuilt system which can uh, manage these kind of exceptions. So what is an exception? Exception, anything which disrupts the normal flow of the program's instruction during execution. Correct? Or in other word, which disrupts the program flow. Right? So in Java, the exception can be classified mainly into subsections. Okay, so maybe like this. Uh, this is exception. By the way, exception isn't class. Is a class. Okay, exception is a class. So this exception class actually it is a child class of throwable. Okay, now this exception class can have two things. Okay, so one thing is checked exception, and another one is unchecked exception. Unchecked exception. Okay, so what is checked exception and what is unchecked exception basically? So checked exception, these are the exceptions that the compiler requires you to handle. Okay, so before running your program or code, compiler will tell you that please handle these exceptions, otherwise I will not run this program. I'll not be able to run this program. Okay, I'll not be able to run this code. Correct? So these are the checked exceptions. What are the checked exceptions? Some examples. Some examples could be like IO exceptions, IO exception. Suppose SQL exception, and so many. I mean, and etc. Actually, file not found exception is also one. File not found exception. Right? So IO exception is basically when we are doing some IO, means input output operations. Okay, file not found exceptions, if suppose we are doing some or we are doing some kind of uh, file related, file reading, file writing. I'll show you how this file not found exception works, how this IO exception works, right? So suppose this file not found exception, suppose we are reading something from a text file, let's say it's easy example, text file. So it could happen that that particular file is not there in the path specified, right, in your system, or someone else has deleted it in between. So that is why compiler will tell you that please handle file not found exception. Otherwise, if that file is moved, then probably your program will crash, right? So these are the overall checked exception. Checked exception means, always remember, these are caught during compiler, or compiler will tell you whether checked exception handling is really necessary or not. Next thing is unchecked exceptions. Unchecked exceptions are the exceptions which are not caught during compilation. Okay, that is, those are not checked exceptions basically. Okay, so compiler will tell you that okay, it's okay. I mean, compiler will not complain about this particular exception, but you may get this kind of exceptions during runtime. During runtime, right? So what are the exceptions? I mean, some examples. Let me give you some examples of unchecked exceptions, like null pointer exceptions is one. Pointer Null pointer exception. Next thing, let me delete it and write it here. So unchecked exception, right? So it could be null pointer exception, null pointer exception. This is also class. Okay, so all these exception types are classes basically. Okay, it could be array index out of bound, which is very important. I already told you regarding this during our array class, right? Array session. So array index out of bound is most important. Array index out of bound, right? Uh, Next could be arithmetic exceptions. Again, very important. Arithmetic exception, right? Arithmetic exceptions, or it can have out of memory exception or stack overflow error, right? So out of memory, these are not exceptions basically. Okay, so there is a difference between exception and errors. Exceptions can be handled, but errors you cannot handle, or rather you should not try to handle errors. Rather, you can what you can do, you can uh, find out the root cause, right? You can find out the root cause of that particular error, and you can probably uh, uh, rectify your code. Suppose let's say in error there is a out of memory error, right? When you are getting some out of memory error, there must be some memory leakage. Okay, there must be some memory leakage, or your heap memory is I mean overflowed, right? Suppose you have created some object, but you have not closed it, you have not destroyed it. So that is why those objects went to heap memory and waiting for garbage collection, right? And eventually the heap memory gets full and you are getting out of memory exception, and uh, your program will crash basically. So we have to be careful uh, when we are writing a robust code, right? We have to always try to write robust code. Robust code means these kind of things are not there. That means the memory leakage, uh, the stack overflow errors, right? Stack overflow error is another thing. So other than objects, right? Objects are going to your heap memory. Other than that, everything is going to your stack memory, right? I have already discussed this, what is heap memory, what is stack memory, in my previous sessions, right? So everything else is going to stack memory. So when stack memory get overflowed during execution, that is a problem, that is an error, right? So we should not we should not handle those errors, but it is in our hand to write the code in the correct way basically. Okay, we should not write which is not understandable, which is not debuggable, properly debuggable, right? And which is not easy to understand. Especially, the main thing is you have to write a code which is easy to understand. Writing, always remember this particular point, that writing easy code is not easy. Okay, you can write messy code with your limited knowledge, but for writing really good code, really easy code which is understandable by any other developers, and which is in terms which is very maintainable, that needs a good amount of knowledge in Java or in any programming language basically. Correct? So there are some errors. Always, just remember it. These are not exceptions, by the way, errors. And errors we should not handle. Errors are basically can be out of memory, out of memory, out of memory errors, and stack overflow, stack overflow error, right? These are two errors. We should not handle these kind of errors. Okay, we should not handle this kind of errors, but we can rectify our code. I mean, to not get. We should not get this. We should rectify our code or refactor our code in such a way that we should not get this kind of errors. Okay. So next thing is exception handling in Java, right? So if you go to internet or if you search Google, you will get there are two ways you can handle exceptions, right? First thing is throw the exception, right? Throwing throw the exception, and next thing is try catch finally. Okay, try catch finally. So throw means you are throwing an exception. Okay, you are throwing an exception. It is not the handling, exception handling. Okay, you are throwing an exception. Handling exception can only be possible using try catch and finally, or try catch block basically. Okay, so what is try catch? I will show you how to use throw, how to use try catch. I will show you in code. Okay, so in try, suppose there is a code, right? So you write that code inside try block. Okay, this is a main code. Okay, this is your code where exception may occur. Okay, and if in any of these lines introduces any of the exceptions, then it should catch that exception here. It should catch the exception here. As soon as the exception occurs, it will stop, or it will terminate the rest of the lines, or execution of rest of the lines, and it will come to this catch portion. And here we have to mention the exception type. Exception type. Don't just mention here exception. Okay, that will work, but as you know, right, exception is a mother class or parent class. There are several exceptions under exception classes, including checked exception and unchecked exceptions. Correct? So only writing exception is not a good practice. Always go for what will be the exception can occur. Okay, suppose file not found exception, suppose IO exception. Those kind of exceptions should be handled separately. You can write multiple try or multiple catch blocks, okay, or within a single block. Suppose this is catch. Suppose I may have these two uh, these two exceptions. One is file not found, another is IO exception. We can use a bitwise OR here, right? File not found or IO exception. Whatever exception you will get that here. And always put a log statement, or here you put e dot print stack trace. Okay, this will print the actual error occurred. Okay, actual error occurred. So whatever exceptions you are having, you can have multiple catch blocks, right? Or you can also write in a single catch, but in different, you can mention those in a single line. You can mention those exceptions in a single line, but in a separate way, right? And if that catch, if either the exception occurred or exception did not occur, okay, whatever, irrespective of any exceptions, if you want to execute some piece of code, right, so that code could be ran using finally block. Whether the exception occurred or not, finally block will mandatorily be executed if you are mentioning this finally block. This is not mandatory, but this will be executed if you are mentioning finally block, then finally block will be executed irrespective of any exception. Whether that exception occurred, whether catch block is executed or try block is executed. So the main code will be in try block, the exception code will be in catch block, exception handling code will be in catch block, and mandatory code will be in finally block. Suppose there is a DB connection and you want to catch the SQL exception, right? And SQL exception occurred. Suppose SQL exception occurred. So what it will do, it will just after catch, if you are not mentioning any finally block, after catch the program will close, or program execution will close, or it will go to the next method, next possible method, right? But if you are using finally block, then suppose db session close, you want to close whether the exception occurred or not, you want to close the db session, then finally block will be the best option. Okay, so this is how try, catch and finally block works. Okay, now let's go to code. Hope my screen is visible. This is exception handling tut.java, right? Now suppose let's start with some easy thing, right? Suppose I want to read uh, what I say, let's say um, some content from a text file, let's say. It's easy, right? So let me write a main method here, and we have to first put the string path, right? File path, string file path. Now here inside string file path, you have to, suppose this is a arbitrary path to txt file, then file dot txt, right? This is an arbitrary path, right? Now how to read any file? There is a class called buffer reader. Buffer buffer reader, right? BFR, or simply reader to be precise. Okay, just buffer reader will read all the in a stream. Okay, buffer reader will read the content of the file in a stream. Okay, so equal to new buffer reader, new buffer reader, and here we have to put the path here, right? So new file reader file path. Okay, so what is file reader and file path? File path is the path of the file. Now file reader basically is used to read the characters from file. Okay, and buffer reader is used to read text from a character input stream efficiently by buffering characters. Buffering characters, always remember, buffering the characters. It will come as a stream. Okay, it's a buffer reader, by the way, is a synchronized class. Okay, go to the documentation of buffer reader and you can read what are the what is its use basically, right? And if you're just looking into it, you can see that new file reader is giving me a compilation error saying that unhandled exception type file not found exception. Correct? So what we'll do, we have to create a try catch block here. Right? Let's create a try catch block here. Try. Right? And we'll put this inside this try catch block. And then catch. Inside catch, what is the what will be the possible error type, or not error type, exception type? It's file not found. File not found exception, E. This is the structure of try catch method. Now here we have to put E dot print stack trace. Print stack trace. Correct? Print stack trace. Now what is next? Next is we have to read the content, right? We have to read the content. Suppose string line is a content. Line by line we have to read. Right? So while line equal to reader dot read line. Okay, this is line by line it will read. Okay, and then we have to check this for not null. Is not equal to null, right? Then what? If you see here, we are getting another exception. What is that? It's unhandled exception type IO exception. So what we have to do, we have to just mention here, we can create another catch block here, right, with IO exception, right? This is also possible, or we can do it in single line using these bitwise OR operator, IO exception, right? IO exception, that is also possible. Okay, so here we'll do it separately, because IO exception and file not found exceptions are sort of similar kind exception. E dot stack trace, sorry, print stack trace. So that is why it was not taking. But if some other kind of exceptions were there, then probably we can do that OR operator things, right? Now what? If it is not null, then simply sysout statement we can print line, right? We can print line. So if we run it, then what is the exception we are going to get? Because there is no file, so file not found exception is going to get, right? So if we run it, see, the exception is file not found exception, no such file or directory. Path to txt file.txt, there is no such file or directory. Okay, so it has thrown the exception. correct? Now instead of this e dot stack trace, print stack trace, right, we can have our own logs, right? Log is the standard one, but for now let me put sysout statement. Okay, in sysout statement we can put something, file not found exception occurred, right? So here if we run it, then this particular message will get displayed, this file not found exception occurred, right? And the same for IO exception also, because IO exception is for read line, reading or writing from outside file. File not found exception is uh, and IO exception similar kind exceptions. Okay, so these are checked exception. Without handling these kind of exceptions, we won't be able to move ahead. We have to handle these exceptions either try catch method or using throw keyword. Okay, so suppose I do not use this try catch method here, okay, which is for me is not very standard way. Okay, so suppose file reader, if you hover here, go to quick fix, you will see add throw declaration. See, throw file not found exception, throws file not found exception. And here also you are getting red color compilation error, right? Go to quick fix, add throws declaration, it will be IO exception. Okay, so IO exception actually covers IO exception as well as that file not found exception. Okay, IO exception. So we have to always think about the lowermost exception, then higher exception. Okay, so file not found exception is the lower exception, IO exception is the overall higher range exception, I mean exception class. So you can use IO exception instead of file not found exception also. But if you want to be specific about the errors or error handling, right, you have to use file not found exception. And please do not use exception throws exception plus, because this is also possible. This is also possible. Throws exception will cover everything, but this is not the standard way. This is not the standard way. Okay, we have to be, when we are going for checked exception or unchecked exception, whatever, we have to be very particular about exception handling. Okay, what kind of exception may occur, right? Now this is all about checked exception. Hope you have understood it. Right, now comes to unchecked exception. So let me create another class here, unchecked exception handling dot java. Right, so what are the unchecked exception? Let's say arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception is what? Suppose divided by 0. Okay, if you are dividing some number with 0, then you will get one arithmetic exception, which is unchecked exception. Suppose I have a number. Okay, I have a number int n, int num equal to 10. Okay, now inside main method I am going to just suppose int result, right, equal to num divided by 0. Okay, num divided by 0. So this is a static, right? So that is why static int. Let me do static int here. So result num divided by 0, and then sys out result. Okay, so if you can see, there is no compilation error, or compiler is not prompting that you must uh, handle the exception here, right? So this is the unchecked exception is going to happen. So if we run it, then in the runtime exception you will get this C, arithmetic exception divided by 0, right? Arithmetic exception is the class. So what we have to do here is we have to create a try catch block again, right? And inside try catch block we have inside try block we have to put our code, right? And here we have to put some catch, right? So in catch it should be arithmetic exception key. Now here we put sysout suvam has captured the exception. Okay, but please do not use system.out.println. I'll tell you why. uh, it is not the standard way. Okay, in the upcoming classes, upcoming sessions, we'll discuss about it. Not in the core Java session, but in the next session. So see, Suvam has captured the exception because the exception has occurred. Result is not has not printed here. Exception has occurred. Now come to finally block. Suppose irrespective of whether this exception occurred or not, I want to execute some block. Okay, I mean some piece of code. Let's say here I am putting some sysout. Uh, Programming works fine. Okay, so if we run it, then see, if you can see the exception has occurred, and also finally block has got executed. Okay, finally block has got executed. Suppose there is no exception. Suppose this is divided by 2, the result would be 5, right? The result would be 5. So there is no exception, but still the programming works fine. That means the finally block got executed. So whether the exception has occurred or not, finally block will get executed mandatorily. Okay, fine. And one more thing is, we can also write, like we are using our exceptions, inbuilt exceptions, right? Inbuilt exceptions means arithmetic exceptions, IO exception, file not found exception, SQL exception, whatever, right? We can also write our exception class, customize exception class. How to write that? We can write it like this. Let me create another class. Suppose unexpected error class dot java. Okay, unexpected error class dot java. Now suppose it should be extended to exception class. Okay, because exception class is the parent class of all the exceptions, including checked exception and unchecked exception, right? Now simply we can put some string over here, string argument using public um, unexpected error handling. Inside that we can put some string arguments, right? And then what is that? We can put a super keyword here, arguments. Just a minute. Just a minute. Change to constructor. Okay, so constructor name was wrong actually. I typed wrongly. So anyway, so if we in this particular thing, right, unchecked exception handling .java, if we put like catch arithmetic exception, also another catch, so we have to put catch block here mandatory. Catch unexpected exception handling e, right? And for that we have to throw the exception here because otherwise we cannot catch it. So throw unexpected error class, and inside that we have to put a string that this is a bad class, right? Sorry. So throw new unexpected error class and then this. So whenever this throw will happen, it will come to this catch block, unexpected error catch block. So here we'll put e dot print stack trace. Okay, and if we run it, see, unexpected error class, this is a bad class, right? This is the custom exception we have created, correct? That's it for this particular session, and that's all for the exception handling. It's very important for programming as well as your interview, right? So thanks for watching, thanks for your time. Please do subscribe my channel, and I'll strongly recommend you to go through the previous videos, right? I have already created a core Java session, right, from scratch to scratch level to this level, right? And there will be many more courses like this in this particular channel. So please do subscribe my channel.